House panel is holding a public hearing on mysterious flying objects.
The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee describes this as one of the great mysteries of our time. And it's a big day for all of these people who have spent so many years pushing for more transparency into this topic.
Out of everything in Congress and everything happening currently in our country and world right now, the UAP topic has been one of the only topics that's received this level of bipartisan support.
Chugga-lugga, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, beautiful brothers and sisters around the world. It is your boy, Krishool, aka the Esoteric Noetic. I just watched an amazing documentary, The Age of Disclosure, and I got to tell you, there is nothing more refreshing than watching things that you have known for such a long time come into fruition. And to see this happening at a time where we are also seeing the rise of artificial intelligence, the rise of quantum computing, and to see the disclosure in full swing, it is such a beautiful synergy taking place. You know, some people refer to this age as the age of Aquarius. Some refer to it as the technological singularity. Some refer to it as Kali Yuga. But I think it is undoubtedly going to be known as also the age of disclosure. It is happening. The truth, as I often say, cannot be hidden for long. And the truth is definitely coming out. And you know what? I watched the documentary, and I wouldn't even really call it a documentary for anyone that has really been following what's going on. It's really the final kill shot in regards to the skeptics talking about whether or not this thing is legitimate. But I want to be very clear about this. Regardless of how much evidence you throw at people, there are some people that are just not going to want to know the truth. It's too paradigm shifting for them. They're never going to listen to the evidence. They're going to say that it's too circumstantial. They're going to say it's not enough. It's been debunked, and come up with all of these ridiculous arguments to move away from the undeniable, unequivocal truth that is staring you straight in the face, that this thing is not built of air and imagination. But I think to anyone that is being sincere and is looking at the sincerity of the figures that are coming out and speaking about this and has been following this, has delved deeply enough into this topic, it becomes unequivocally clear. I know we have a lot of public figures in the what we call the truth movement that are still on the fence about this, always have this air of skepticism. I've seen figures like Joe Rogan say, look, he's been deeply into this for a long time, which is true, but he's like on the fence. He recently came out speaking about how he's had this dream that may potentially have been an abduction experience, and he's very open to this idea. He kind of throws this fanciful idea of perhaps these extraterrestrials being from the future. That seems to be the more plausible scenario in his mindset. But I think anyone that has delved deeply enough into this subject matter realizes that all these people cannot be lying. All these people are speaking about hard facts, and the level of credibility within their stories, the fact that it's corroborated by so many thousands of testimonies, leads to the undeniable conclusion that this thing is real. And, this documentary basically maps out what we've seen over the last few years, the age of disclosure, how we've seen figures like David Grush come out and testify in regards to having evidence about extraterrestrial crafts and also biologics, as he coined or used in his testimony, that phrase, biologics. Anytime you hear something like that from an official governmental figure, someone in the military, in some kind of hearing, speaking about biologics, that should very much raise an eyebrow. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would make you go, okay, this thing is not just built of air and imagination. And this guy was unequivocally speaking about the fact that they have recovered biologics, and we're talking about extraterrestrial beings here. You see, one of the frustrating things about what's going on is that whereas, we've been hearing people kind of open up to the idea of extraterrestrial craft, or craft UAPs, we're calling them now. The idea of extraterrestrial beings has still been this dubious topic, but I think anyone that's been sincere realizes that, no, we're not dealing with drones here. We're not dealing with man-made devices here. We're dealing with technologies that far exceed the capabilities of us in present time or any time in the near future. And even if that was not the case based on your assessment, the fact that there's so much corroborating evidence in regards to where many of these craft come from by biologics, essentially. They're found often with the remains of extraterrestrial beings, and we have had encounters with this kind of stuff. As fanciful as it may seem to the people that are new to this subject matter, it is undeniable that we're dealing with an advanced life form here that is not necessarily from the future, because there are many different extraterrestrial beings, that have been complicit in these encounters. But we're dealing with biological entities, beings that actually have an awareness like you and I, and are behind these extraterrestrial craft. And I wanted to talk about just some of the points, that were raised in this documentary, and also my thoughts on everything that's going on with the disclosure scene right now. And I want to talk about essentially how this disclosure is happening, because that's really important to understand. A lot of times people look at what goes on in government. They speak about it as if it's basically an entity that is either all good or all bad, and it's very vague how they speak about this thing, as if it's some megalith where decisions are always unanimous and people are working cohesively together. And I find, regardless of whether or not you're on the right or the left, you're libertarian or whatnot, people tend to speak in synecdoche, which becomes vague. Ultimately, you have to realize that these institutions are made up of people. Some people want certain things, they're not always in line, and they're fighting against each other. And often this subject, for instance, there's certain figures that have had access to a lot of top secret information and are now no longer in government. They've died, they passed away. And the way in which this hierarchy of secrecy works, not everyone has been briefed into the UFO scene. A lot of people have this mindset that high-ranking governmental officials, presidents, and one of the things we've learned from David Grush is that people that are supposed to have the authority to know what's going on often don't, because they haven't been briefed in. Presidents don't always get briefed in. In fact, the presidents have not been briefed in for a long time. The one president that we typically know about in the UFO scene that was briefed in was Eisenhower, known as the General. This is someone that did have an understanding. Also, other figures that are allegedly said to have been briefed in to some extent, like JFK having some insight into the UFO figure, and also Richard Nixon, I've heard. But not every single person has been briefed in. And a lot of the times, this stuff gets lost in generations. There's a lot of stuff that the current generation doesn't seem to know about what's going on with the UFO scene, because presidents come and go, figures in government come and go, but individuals stay. Some individuals have made the decision not to brief other figures with this information, and a lot of the times they want to protect themselves because they've done a lot of horrible things in order to keep this information from people, like assassinations. This is a common tool that is used anytime you're trying to prevent information from coming out in the interests of national defense and so forth. You know that there's going to be hell to pay, and as a result, you know that if this stuff was to come out, you probably do some time or face the ultimate price for your doings. And as a result, a lot of times this stuff doesn't come out until people are dead, and then we're left with just the knowledge, the rumors, so to speak, but the many testimonials that have been provided in regards to this entire scene. And if you've been following this thing, ladies and gentlemen, for the last 10, 20, 30 years like I have, you realize that there is so much evidence around this stuff. When you have a look at the testimony of figures like David Grush, and then you apply the testimonies of other figures like Bob Lazar and Phil Snyder, some of the what I call the pioneers of the modern world in disseminating what's really going on. George Knapp, amazing journalist, really has cohesively put together the works of so many of these figures. John Lear. You realize that there is a strong thread of information speaking about what is going on. And what's interesting right now is when we have a look at the other areas of technology that are thriving. We have artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and obviously the disclosure that is taking place right now, an area of information that is really igniting people's thirst for what's really going on in the world. There is this strong correlation. There's like a triad going on. I've heard other people make reference to this in the sense that whereas we are seeing this journey towards artificial general superintelligence, and we're also seeing quantum computing becoming a real thing with Microsoft's Willow, the kind of things that these technologies are able to do. Much of this has been made possible because of the innovations that took place from the discovery of crashed craft. And it sounds fanciful, but need I remind people that there are high-ranking generals that have come out and spoken about this. Colonel Philip Corso is probably the most noted one. He released a book in 1997, I believe, speaking about how he oversaw the reverse engineering of the down Roswell craft. The metamaterials that were used in this were indestructible. The kind of technologies were far beyond anything at the time, or to the time that we have now. And by reverse engineering this, they were able to pave the way for the technologies that we see in the technology scene right now, such as the integrated circuit chip, such as fiber optics, night vision, such as a plethora of different technologies. And the fact that this has paved the way for the technological scene also leads at least some of us to think that perhaps artificial intelligence has come, or at least its foundations have been laid through the recovery of down craft, like the Roswell incident. And bearing in mind, there are many craft, and this is not just a phenomenon that affects the United States of America. There are so many other countries complicit in this, China, Russia, and so forth. But what's interesting is Philip Corso speaks about how much of this technology was essentially given to private entities, and this was given to Bell Labs, Lockheed Martin, and so forth, and this has paved the way to much of the fighter technology that we see being implemented. And the fact that we are at a point now where we're seeing this efflorescence of technology with artificial intelligence, right? This technology that in a lot of ways has been shaped through the research that was done on the reverse engineered craft, right, is now allowing us to decode much of the technology that is still had about these extraterrestrial crafts. Because bearing in mind, this is an ongoing process. The United States government very much does have this this technology and the down craft. They haven't uncovered everything there is to know about these extraterrestrial crafts. And by using artificial intelligence now, by using quantum computing, they're actually able, as you would imagine, to resolve many of the dilemmas that face them. I mean, one of the things I found so fascinating listening to Bob Lazar speak about the craft that he reverse engineered is that there was some kind of force field that was put up. And he speaks about the physics of this. I'm obviously not a physics expert here, but speaks about some kind of like the gravitational field that would need to be produced in order to create this kind of technology. And the bottom line is that we did not have that technology available to us, and they were trying to figure out how a lot of this stuff worked, because there's no way we could actually have a force field back then or now, well, given we didn't have access to any alien technology. As to whether or not it's possible now, though, with the use of AI and the use of quantum computing, we can actually make these unbelievably impossible, seemingly impossible technologies move into the realm of reality. And this is one of the beautiful things. We're actually using AI now to solve many of the problems that were facing us, a few decades ago. And it's kind of like this loop that's going on, in the sense that artificial intelligence has been paved through much of the technology that was recovered on the craft. If you buy into it, I think it's more than plausible that it has been influenced, according to figures like Corso. And then you have a look at how this technology, this understanding of alien technology, is now being used through AI in order to better understand this alien technology. And it's this beautiful synergy that is taking place: quantum computing, artificial general intelligence, and then UFO discovery. This area of knowledge, this area of technology that is allowing this tremendous efflorescence of the human experience. And it really is a beautiful thing what we're seeing right now. And I also want to talk about some of the questions that are posed in the documentary, The Age of Discovery. Because typically what you hear from the figures in government is that we don't know. And a lot of them are speaking honestly. A lot of people have this mindset that the government is lying, God is lying. Stop speaking about government. Stop speaking about entities like that. Speak about individuals, because many of these individuals don't actually know. Someone like Grush had to go through so many different levels to find out what was going on, because certain individuals just did not want to brief him in on what was going on. As soon as you start speaking about government entities, it becomes gray and vague, and you got to be specific about this stuff. And what is very clear is that there are certain individuals that absolutely have no idea what is going on, the work in government. There are others that do. There are others that are truly trying to figure out what is going on. People like David Grush. If you've listened to any of his interviews, you realize that this guy is a skeptical, very straightforward individual, didn't believe in any of this fairy woo-woo stuff in regards to extraterrestrials, all that kind of stuff, but has, like most of us, been confronted with evidence where he's had to be honest with himself and confront this information for what it is. And once you are looking at something with enough earnesty, with enough diligence, the truth reveals itself to you. And he's come to the underlying conclusion that, yes, this stuff is real. Yes, the U.S. government has biologics, as he says, down crap. This stuff is a real thing. And there are many individuals that prevented him from getting access to this stuff. And he speaks about how his life is under threat. But what I find most frustrating is a lot of people still play this game where it's like, well, you can't trust him. He's from the government. And, you know, it's all part of some massive conspiracy to prevent us from really knowing what's going on. The government must be lying to us. That's such a vague, weak way of looking at things. It's such a childish, myopic understanding of how this stuff really works, that there are individuals that are actually trying to arrive at the truth, which leads us to figures like David Grush, but specifically, this whole thing popped up through Majestic 12 many decades ago. And for anyone that knows anything about Majestic 12, basically this is a group of 12 individuals that had been elected, and ultimately, they weren't all on the same page. Some of them wanted to go out and release this information. Some of them didn't. And the understanding is that the main decision that was agreed upon, well, the main reason why we don't understand what's really going on in the UFO scene is because Majestic 12 made the decision to hide this information. In fact, there was a massive disinformation campaign that took place where the CIA, obviously implicated in this kind of stuff, took it upon themselves to paint this picture in the media that this stuff is built of air and imagination, and you're a kook, you're a crazy person if you buy into it, and therefore you create this zeitgeist that anyone that buys into this topic, and it is the logical, rational position of any thinking person that we are not alone in this universe, and any knowledgeable person has looked at this information like I have, that this is actually a credible thing. But more to the point, they actually went after individuals, destroyed their lives for speaking about this kind of stuff, not just in the realm of destroying them from a public level and censoring them and making them sound like crazy people, like Bob Lazar, trying to pretend that this guy hadn't gone to the university that he went to, that didn't have any contacts, when he was actually able to dig this stuff up. And that should be a big red herring to anyone. Anytime you see efforts which are unbelievably clear, where an organization has taken upon itself in order to make up lies about you in order to make the point, that should really make you think, why are they doing that? What are you trying to hide here? Because it's one thing if the government just came out and said, we don't know anything about this, which I think kind of crazy, and let's be clear about this, certain individuals do that. Like, you can question them, but when certain individuals go out and try to make up things about you, and that becomes very clear they're making this thing up, it should give credibility to the person that is being accused of being a bullshit artist. And that's what we've seen with many of these individuals. Figures like Phil Snyder, that was essentially assassinated. And of course, the official story is, well, you know, he basically died due to suspicious circumstances. But anyone that follows the Phil Snyder story realizes that he would make these speeches, he'd have these lectures, and he'd constantly speak about how he was putting himself in tremendous danger, and people had attempted to take him out many times. Spoke about this, and this guy was someone that had one of the highest clearances. Spoke about having a Rhyolite clearance, from what I understand, and very much he had some insane encounters with extraterrestrial beings, according to his story. Spoke about firefights in the S4. Basically working on building underground bases there, and had an encounter with a very close encounter that left him with a fatal injury. And the frustrating thing is, despite him claiming over and over again that his life was in risk and people trying to kill him, this guy goes missing, died in circumstances that anyone that looks at the evidence realizes that this is not some mere accident going on over here. But of course, people seem to be so quick to not look at the evidence and just say, well, you know, perhaps it was just some unfortunate accident here, when it's clearly an assassination. And this is typically what happens with people that speak out about this kind of stuff: character assassination or physical assassination. But it is so fascinating to see the work of these great figures finally paving the way to something that's happening on a more mainstream level, when we're seeing certain senators and public officials come out and speak about this thing in a more credible way. You know, I mean, not that I give that much credibility in the mainstream media, but it is it is encouraging to see that. But I think one of the biggest figures in regards to this entire UFO scene in the Western world, in the United States anyway, is Bob Lazar. Because, look, you can say what you want about that guy, but the idea of having a story that remains consistent for 30 years is so detailed, and to speak with that level of scientific skepticism, it's really hard to disprove the works of someone like that. And obviously, Element 115, this claim he made at the time, sounded completely ridiculous to many of the skeptics, right? Turns out being true, and people make the argument, well, it's not able to be sustained in any long period of time, therefore, his claim was ridiculous. I mean, it's so insane to me that people come up with these kind of arguments. This guy was speaking about the inner workings of the technology that was reverse engineering, Element 115 actually existing. And then 30 years later, as the technology catches up with him, we find out that it's a real thing. But because we're not at the point where we can sustain it enough, people still make the claim that it doesn't really vindicate him. But I think to any honest, sane person, Bob Lazar has been more than vindicated. You listen to his testimonies, you listen to his story, you watch the interview with Joe Rogan, and it is clear that that guy is at the very least not lying, very much believes his story. And when you corroborate this with this other stories and they're not stories, they're full, detailed accounts of what's happened. Figures like John Lear, his friend, and the works of George Knapp, Phil Snyder, and the many thousands of testimonies that have come before him in recent times. And don't even get me started on the ancient stuff. It is undeniably clear that his story holds up. And this guy was dealing with technologies that were not terrestrial in nature. And the most fascinating thing, a lot of people that look into this subject matter, they tend to be looking at it with a cursory glance and don't realize that Bob Lazar, granted, he's only speaking about what he actually experienced, what he could actually verify himself. He was privy to a whole bunch of information speaking about the origins of the craft that he was working on. He was actually debriefed about the craft. He got information. I heard him speaking about where the extraterrestrial beings are supposedly coming from, which is Zeta Reticuli, the Greys. I mean, a lot of people have this idea that we don't know what's going on. And I'm going to tell you unequivocally, definitively, because, I tend to be skeptical when I speak about things I don't know. I make assumptions, but when I speak about things definitively, it's because I am certain about this shit. But we're not dealing with one entity here. It's not one group of aliens. I mean, it's many. There are many extraterrestrial beings, many different extraterrestrial crafts, and the idea of saying we don't know where these people come from, speaking in these ambivalent, vague ways where people say they're good, they're bad, etc., etc. It's just so, it shows that people don't really know much in regards to the history of what's going on. It's like, it would be like looking at what's going on planet Earth and saying that humans are bad, that the blacks are the people that are complicit in all the warfare, or the whites are, when it's just many, many different groups of people that are doing many different things. And there are many eyewitness reports to verify this kind of stuff. So when we speak about extraterrestrial beings, it's very clear to be it's very important to be specific about this stuff, that we are dealing with beings, groups that have different agendas, that are trying to do different things. Some people have theorized that they come from the sea, they come from the earth, they come from outer space. And we at least know for certain that some of these things are true, that many of them do have their origins out of space, that many of them do actually have underground bases. But let's not get this thing twisted that we don't know anything in regards to the origins of this kind of stuff. That's only the case for people that are still new. They're infants dealing with this topic, and they're only working from the basis of the last 5 or 10 years. For anyone that has been delving into this stuff for the last 80 years in the recent history of the world, realizes that this is like a Game of Thrones saga that has many different chapters and many different ages. So let's get that straight. Now, of course, the normies are not going to accept this thing no matter what. There are going to be some people that even after E.T. lands on the football field, people are going to say it's a hoax. It's some kind of a artificial intelligence, a holographic projection. And I don't waste my time with people like this, but I just try to make it very clear that we are now at a point where figures have come out and spoken about their direct experiences. We have had essentially hundreds of people having had these sightings. The only way to explain this is to be real and say that, yes, we're dealing with extraterrestrial craft here. Anything else, I think, is just disingenuous. I mean, this is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll just end with this. We are now at a time where it really is not going to matter that long whether or not you buy into the narrative of us getting this technology from extraterrestrials and whatnot, because we're reaching a point where artificial general superintelligence is going to be able to make such rapid, groundbreaking discoveries in the field of science, technology, that we will have our own UFOs that seem as if they are extraterrestrial or not from this planet. And in a sense, they're not. I mean, the technology, in my argument, that has seeded the artificial intelligence that we have now, potentially, is not of human origin initially. And I know that seems to offend a lot of people, but from a perspective, it's true, because all creations are built off the creations of others. Obviously, there are humans that have created this technology, open AI. We can go to actual organizations, but when we're having a look at where the foundation of this technology comes from, I don't think it's a terrestrial in origin. And we're reaching a point where we're practically going to have an extraterrestrial kind of intelligence that emerges, some kind of artificially sentient being that has been generated with AI. And we're on the verge of, not on the verge, we're actually at a point where quantum computing, which used to sound fanciful, and I never thought I'd say this, but in my time, there was a time not that long ago, when you'd look at quantum computing and be like, oh, that's ages down the road. That's not something. I remember being in maths class as a kid and our teacher talking about how, the quantum computers of the future, they're going to be able to do like incredible things and essentially solve like ridiculous complex problems that would take an infinite amount of years to accomplish. And of course, my mind could not even comprehend this at the time, but we're there. We are very much there. We now have Microsoft's Willow, I think it is, able to do computations within a few seconds or minutes that would have taken, like, of course, these are just words to me that don't even make that much sense, like an infinite amount of time to do. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. So, any one of these areas, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, would be enough to bring about this efflorescence of consciousness, like a ontological shock to the very nature of reality. But when you take on these three components, you take on the fact that we are living in an age of artificial intelligence, on the verge of artificial general superintelligence, on the verge of quantum computing being a real thing in our household and affecting every area of society, and then we're on the verge of UFO disclosure. I think we're going to see an age where people, whether or not they are ready for it, are going to have an ontological shock and realize that we are not alone. Whether it is extraterrestrial or the biologics side of things, or whether it's extraterrestrial beings that have come about through artificial intelligence, we are living in a new age. It is the age of disclosure, and it is a beautiful thing. And as I always say, there are three things that cannot remain hidden for long. The sun, the moon, and the truth of disclosure. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, and the truth is nigh. Until next time, kisses, hugs, belly rubs, signing out. Peace be upon your butt cheeks. Your boy, Krishool.
I don't even care.